Today's episode brings us into the raw, unfiltered journey of a man who spent years wrestling with himself. Mike Leone's story begins with his time in the U.S. Army, where a medical issue left him potentially stuck in a cycle of being recycled, unable to train, and unable to belong. Feeling trapped and desperate for a way back to his life, he took the advice of a drill sergeant and made a decision that would follow him for years. He went AWOL. But the real battle didn't start when he left the base. It started inside him. For years, Mike carried the weight of self-hatred, shame, and the belief that he had failed beyond repair. Yet what he discovered, slowly and painfully, is that God never stopped calling him worthy. Even when he couldn't see it, even when he couldn't feel it, even when he ran. This conversation is about the long road back to self-compassion, the courage it takes to face your own reflection, and the grace that meets us in the places we least expect. Psalm 139 verse 14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." It's a reminder that your worth isn't determined by your choices, your past, or your failures. It's rooted in the one who made you with intention, purpose, and love that doesn't shift with circumstance. So open your minds and open your hearts as Mike shares his story.
Heavenly Father, I thank you for this evening. I thank you for this space. And I thank you for putting it in our hearts to come together, to tell our stories, to honor you, and to try our best to bring others to you. And God, I ask that you send the Holy Spirit down to us, to be in this space with us, to grant us wisdom, and help us choose the right words to use to honor you, and to share these stories so that we might affect someone in need. Lord, it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'm slowly getting better with that. I still have my flubs, but I'm getting better with it.
Yeah, sometimes praying can be hard, but
Yeah.
out loud anyway. I have no problem doing it in my head.
Yeah. When I do it in my head, I tend to have that tendency of getting a little too casual.
Oh, I definitely
God.
get very casual with it.
like he's a buddy. Like,
Yeah.
hey man,
Yeah.
I could really use this right now.
But isn't that what he wants? I mean, I feel like that's what he wants, though. He wants it to be
Yeah.
personal. You know, like, I don't talk to my dad like, "Dear Dad." You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yo, Dad."
What's up, big guy?
I mean, given God deserves a lot more respect than my dad. No offense to my dad, but, you know.
Of course. All right, so Mike, I'm just going to pass the ball to you and let you tell the story of how you came to God.
Okay. So first off, I do want to start with a disclaimer. Even though this is my testimony, I don't believe testimonies ever end until we are gone. Just saying, because like I am always struggling still. Just because I'm saying like I know God better than I have in my life, it doesn't mean that the struggles stop. As a matter of fact, they get much worse.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to start with that disclaimer.
Yeah. And you know what?
Yeah.
I have seen and heard people tell multiple testimonies.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that.
I don't know. Just like, I don't know. I guess the idea is just like, I'm not some like, I'm holier than thou just because I know God now.
Yes.
I mean, that's the main point I wanted to make with it. But anyway, so basically my relationship with God started pretty much right when I even knew who God was, which was very young, because my parents were both Christian when I was born. So I was born, raised Christian, always have been. I've been through, well, I guess I won't jump to that yet, but like, so throughout my childhood, you know, I had that childhood relationship with God, you know, like, okay, your parents talk about him, you know he's there,
Yeah,
I guess,
there,
but you don't
pray to him.
right. You know the idea about him.
Yes.
You know, but you don't, I didn't actually experience him. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
or anything that showed me that he was truly there, really, you know? Not until teens, you know, there was maybe a few times in my teens that I like, you know, when you think your life is just so hard as a teenager. But I mean,
Life is terrible.
Well, and you know, and in teenagers' defense too, during that time, it is
Yeah,
like, you know what I
absolutely.
mean? Because like you're going, I mean, teens are hard, man. Like you're going through those life changes and stuff, even though you don't realize how hard life gets. But still, I think that's the first like glimpse of it.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
hardest that they've ever
Yeah.
faced in their life.
Right. So like depression and all that, you know, there was times in very deep depression during high school and stuff that I'd hit, where he did kind of help me, pull me out of it in very simple ways, you know. But even then, I don't think I've even fully understood it. Also, you know, I was through that time. I was through 3 church breakups. 3. So I had a bitter taste in my mouth towards church, which even to this day, I mean, I go on Paul Pack Church. I've talked to Pastor Ken about it. Like, you might see me very reclusive, and it's a defense.
Yeah.
And I try not to be that way. But it's like, I'm afraid to get close to people at church, and I hate that feeling. But it's like, those church breakups were hard, man. They burnt people pretty bad, and it's the devil's favorite victories are taking down churches, because it doesn't just affect the pastor. It affects the entire congregation and their relationship and walk with God. It can affect, so that really was rough. But still, God was like present. I knew it, like at that point too, when I was in my later teens, like I knew he was there, and I was really trying my best to be a good kid. I mean, I got into mischief, obviously, and maybe drink a little bit too, but like nothing crazy. Like, people in high school, like a lot of them knew me as a kid, didn't do drugs, didn't have sex, nothing. Like I not to get too personal, but I mean, that's a testimony, right? I didn't lose my virginity until I was like 20, so, which everyone's like, that's insane.
Yeah, that's a weird flex.
Yeah,
your teenage years,
I know. Which is kind of sad, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, it is sad that that's a flex because, like, but yeah, I mean, kudos to me for that, I guess, even though it is what it is. But anyway, so really when things started changing, was so I actually was in the National Guard. There's a long story that I'm not going to get into way too much detail about, but there are things that have to be said about it to understand like the whole testimony of all this. So my whole childhood, I wanted to be in the Army. Like, I knew it because my grandfather, both of my grandfathers served World War II. I never got to know them. So like my connection with them was the Army and history. My grandfather landed Utah Beach, which I always respected him a lot for. So I just had that engraved in me that I wanted to do it. And so I joined National Guard as infantry. I didn't get sent overseas or anything because like I actually ended up going to basic training, and I had what's called tachycardia. And once they found out I had it, I was put on a dead man's profile, which means you do not train. That's it. You're done.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, what's going to happen to me? And they're like, oh, most likely a medical discharge. I was like, so I don't get to do this. And they're like, no. And then they were telling me that they were going to recycle me, which means you start at day 1. And I was like, so then I could just pick up training again. They're like, oh no, you'll still be on a dead man's profile. So they were just going to keep recycling me. I talked to a private there. He's like, oh, I've been recycled for about almost 2 years now. He's like, I'm still waiting to get out. I'm like, that's insane. So me and a couple other guys, we were all on this dead man's profile, and we actually had a drill sergeant come up to us and say, you guys are never going to get out here unless you leave. So he basically, off the record, told us to go AWOL.
Wow.
So me and 4 other guys went AWOL when they set it up. So CQ duty, which is like you sit at a desk all night and basically make sure you just keep an eye out. He's like, CQ duty will be asleep at 0300 hours, which is 3 o'clock in the morning. Asleep,
Yeah.
in quotes. And there's a fence across the field. He's like, he's like, just run straight across. You're going to see a hole in that fence. Jump through that hole. He's like, there's a railroad track right at the bottom of the hill. Once you hit the railroad track, take a right onto it and walk 12 miles to Columbus, because this was at Fort Benning, Georgia. And so me and those guys ended up doing that. We ended up actually, so this was the first big thing where God was like showing me like, I'm with you, and mind you too, I'm still actually in the process of dealing with the trauma of all this because, I haven't for all these years, which, and I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to say like, well, I got PTSD, you know, like, because I mean, there's a lot of guys that might be hearing this that are like freaking coward right now, you know, because AWOL is a huge no-no.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I look, and I've dealt with a lot of self-hate from that I did end up running. I was like, well, what if I didn't, you know? Mind you, too, this is something else. One of my drill sergeants also threatened to kill me almost every single day. Once he found out I was getting discharged, he hated me. Absolutely hated me. The man's actually in Fort Leavenworth now for the death of 7 privates. So he was actually being very serious about me wanting dead. To me, anyway, that's why I'm getting. But yeah, he was found guilty for the death of 7 privates.
Jeez.
Which I found out after I got out from all this. But anyway, back to all that. So, but yeah, we hit the railroad track, walked, got to Columbus, but what we didn't know was when you're on that train track, of course, it's going to lead to a railroad, or like a train station. Well, this train station in Columbus was like a working train station with guys like trains coming in and out. So obviously someone saw us, called the cops. We were running from cops through moving trains. These cops were furious. They were like yelling at us to stop. I mean, these guys weren't going to catch up to us. We're at our peak physical shape. We are fresh and basically in basic, you know? I mean, this was week 5 of training. So I'm like peak shape. All the other guys are. So they're not outrunning us. Me and my buddy Moon, we ended up jumping through actually a moving freight train with the door open and jumped out the other side to get away from them. They ended up boxing us in though. With the cars, they brought 2 cars in and just boxed me and Moon in. So they had us. And they knew immediately. They're like, what are you guys doing? We're like, we were just kind of chilling, you know, just walking around. They're like, oh yeah, 3 a.m, all with buzzed heads. Like, come on, guys. Like, you guys are straight from Benning. And so we're like, obviously.
And now, is that why someone called the cops? Is because you were in uniform?
Well, no, we weren't even in uniform. So that was another thing. We were actually in our PT gear, which is just black shorts, white shirt. But we actually took Sharpies and we colored out the Army logo on it. And we had our sneakers on, and so only one of us had our civvies on, which was we still talk to this day too. My really good buddy Caesar, he actually the drill sergeant that told us to leave. I'm not going to say his name.
No.
The drill sergeant that told us to leave actually gave Caesar his civilian clothes because he was in his platoon. I can't really remember. I want to say it was like 1st platoon or something like that. I was in 2nd. And so he was the only one that had them. The rest of us just wore PT gear. And so the chief was brought down from the station, and he was like, you know, he's like, I know Fort Benning well. It's not easy to get out of there. So he's like, how the hell did you guys get out? And we were just keeping our mouths shut because we didn't want to get the drill sergeant in trouble. The dude, I 100% to this day believe in my heart, the dude was looking out for us.
That's what it sounds like, for
sure. He was an awesome drill sergeant. He took care of so many different guys. Like, I mean, he did his job. Trust me, you didn't want to piss him off. You don't want to piss any of them off. But you could tell in his eyes he cared about what he was doing. So anyway, so they're like, well, we're going to keep you here, and then you guys are going to be brought back. And now I am pissing my pants because I was like, this other drill sergeant, again, I just don't want to say his name just because, but that threatened to kill me. I was like, he's really going to kill me now, you know? So I'm like pissing my pants. I'm terrified. The rest of the guys end up falling asleep because, I mean, we are dead tired at that point. I'm panicking. I'm having a panic attack. And so the other cops leave. They leave them there with one deputy to just keep us there detained until the drill sergeants come pick us up. They had us waiting there for like 2 hours and nothing. We weren't hearing anything or anything like that. And then the cop was like, yo, buddy, it's getting a little chilly. You want to sit in the car with me, man? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And so he opens the door. He's like, no, you can sit in the front with me, man. It's fine. Because once we did tell them a little bit about what was going on, and their demeanor towards us changed like completely. Yeah. Like, and even the chief was like, what the frig is going on down there? You know, he was also retired out of the Army. So I think he took it a little personal, you know, about what was going on with us. And I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, God, like, if you want me to be in the Army, so be it. But if you don't, you have to work out some kind of miracle that these cops are actually going to let us go. I am not even kidding you. Not even 5 minutes after praying that prayer, he gets a call on the radio from the chief. He's like, Deputy, what's your status? He's like, I'm still waiting on the drill sergeants. He's like, screw it, let them go. We're talking 5 AWOL soldiers.
Yeah.
Wanted. You're immediately wanted when you go AWOL. They'll even put you on a most wanted list.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you're like no flight or anything. There's no chance of you like getting through security or anything the minute you go AWOL. And he's like, he's like, bro, you have a kid at home. Like this cop was telling me too, that he just had a baby born a few days prior. He's like, get home to your wife and kid, dude. Let them go. And I was like kicking the other guys. I was like, wake up. He's letting us go. Get up. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, he's letting us go. And so he starts uncuffing us. While he's uncuffing us, another call from the station comes in. And they're like, Deputy, what's your status with those privates? He's like, why, what's up? And she's like, well, we just got a call from Benning. The drill sergeants are on their way. We're standing there and we're like, you gotta be kidding. He's like, tell them I let them go already. While we're standing there with him still. And so he's like, uncuffs us. He's like, look, man. He's like, you guys just get home safe. He's like, stay off private property. He's like, I would highly recommend you take buses home. Try not to fly home. They'll ping you. He's like, and just be safe, all right? And he sent us on our way. First miracle of all that. Because, like, I mean, honestly, what are the chances of that? Like, that's, like, crazy.
Seriously.
You know? So, we ended up staying at a motel. Actually, it was really crazy. While we were at that motel, there was a room next to us that was getting busted. It was some couple, I guess they were selling meth or something out of the motel room. So there was literally a SWAT team outside of our doors. And we're freaking out. Me and Moon are going for the bathroom window.
You're already set to get out.
Oh, yeah. We're ready to run. And then my another buddy that was with us, he's like, no, guys, they're busting in on the room next to us. So we're ready to jump out these windows with the SWAT team around. Like, you can't make this stuff up, man. I can only imagine the
panic when you saw the uniforms coming.
Oh, dude, I was like, no, we're done. Like, that's it. I was like, they, But yeah, so that was a thing that happened that was just kind of amusing, I guess. But we ended up, long story short, with that part of it, is I ended up taking a bus all the way to Harrisburg, from Atlanta, Georgia, all the way to Harrisburg. And my parents ended up picking me back up. Now, our instructions were to stay low for 3 months, because when you're marked AWOL for a certain amount of time, well, first off, you have to be dropped from payroll, and then you're considered AWOL. And then if you are... See, I don't even know if I should be saying this, but if
you don't have to give too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, what he told us is you guys will just get a general discharge out because you guys didn't even finish basic, so it's not as big of a deal. Like, you will be discharged at Fort Knox, if you wait a certain amount of time. So I did. And this is the next line of, like, God, again, showing me that he's, got my back. But I go turn myself into West Point, and I'm taken in by military police investigators, which is an important part because they're not just regular MPs, they're investigators. Okay. So they end up seeing me, and at the gate, they have to put me in cuffs and stuff, but they look at my parents and are like, don't worry, Mom, Dad, he's in good hands. He's like, and the guy's like, I actually used to work at Fort Knox for this exact thing. He'll be taken care of. No problem. We just got to confirm that he was AWOL, and then we're going to be putting him on a plane, Fort Knox. He'll be discharged and back to you guys before you know it. So it's not a big deal. So, they're like, okay. And so, these guys were super awesome with me. They're like, you okay, man? You comfortable? Handcuffs aren't too tight, right? I'm like, no. And so they take me, and they're like, all right, we're just going to give a call down to Fort Benning and just confirm that you are actually AWOL, and then we'll get your ticket processed, all that stuff to send you to Fort Knox. So everything's checking out the way the drill sergeant said it would. They come back in. they throw a file in front of me and they're like, who's drill sergeant so-and-so, which is the one that they named was the one that wanted me dead.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, and why does he have it out for you? I'm like, why? They're like, he put you down that you were absent with leave, which means we have orders to send you back to Fort Benning. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, it's not making sense to us either. They're like, why would he do that? I was like, and then I told him, I was like, look, this guy has had it out for me. He's threatened to kill me multiple times. Like, and they're like, private, like, this is obviously a big deal. Like, we've, in all my years dealing with this, I've never seen a drill sergeant do that before. So I was like, guys, you cannot send me back down there. They're like, we have orders, private. Like, they're like, the best piece of advice that I can give you right now is you give us your statement about the night you left. You give names and everything. Like, we want every bit of detail, but they're like, because now they're interested because there's an investigation now. Like, what is going on? And why did a drill sergeant tell you guys to leave while you have another one that wants to kill you, that puts you, so like a lot of things weren't adding up to them. So I was like, fine. So they bring me into an interrogation room. I give them the details of everything that happened to me. And while a corporal was giving me was debriefing me, there was, they were on the phone with Fort Benning and they were fighting with my CEO, like telling them like, look, we are not comfortable sending this guy back down there. And so the CEO reassured him that he wouldn't be sent to their company, that I wouldn't be sent back to the same company. They put me in another company. And I literally heard him through, given there's an interrogation room, it's supposed to be soundproof. I heard them screaming at him. Like, you really think this dude's not going to come find him? It's Fort Benning. It's not like it's that hard to find someone, given it's a big fort, but still easily can find a private there if you had to.
Yeah.
And so they're freaking out. So they come back in and they're like, look, private, our hands are tied here. We have to process your ticket to send you back down to Benning. So now I'm back in panic mode. And I'm like just praying to God, like, again, like, God, like, you've got to get me out of this. I don't know. Like, and at this point too, now I'm confused too. Like, why would you get me home safely just to put me back in this position again? And a correction there too. It wasn't him doing it.
Right. Exactly.
It was this drill sergeant that was forcing a miracle to happen, So they are like, so come with us. We're going to go get your ticket processed. As we're walking there, these guys take me by the arm and put me in an alley. And they put me up against the wall and they're like, private, we've never had this conversation. They're like, if you get a ticket directly to Atlanta, there's nothing, or directly to Columbus, there's nothing we could do for you. They're like, however, we are pretty sure that you need to have a connecting flight from Atlanta to Columbus, which Columbus was the closest place to Fort Benning. And they're like, if that happens, we did say that you're not a flight risk. They're like, are you catching what we're putting down? I'm like, you're telling me to go AWOL again. They're like, I'm not telling you to do anything. I was like, I got you. They're like, our orders are just to see you get on the flight at JFK. Once we see you get on that flight, we wash our hands of whatever happened. They're like, but like I said, we did say you're not a flight risk, so security and escorting you to your flight isn't necessary. They're like, get me? I'm like, okay. They're like, now you better be praying to the big man upstairs that there's no connecting, or that it's not a direct flight, that they don't try doing something like that to you. So I'm immediately praying. We get inside, the lady starts processing my ticket and she's like, you have a connected flight from Atlanta to Columbus. And he like nudges my arm. He's like, and there's no way they could try changing that at the last second. And she looks like, I'm like, no. He's like, excellent. All right, cool. And so then they take me out, and they're like, well, big man upstairs must like you, dude. I was like, I guess so. So that was the second, like, miracle, really.
Different plans for you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I ended up, they take me to JFK, which there's a lot I'm skipping because it was all, a lot of it was kind of humorous. You know, I'm being escorted through JFK. These guys aren't even in military uniforms. They're in overcoats with, like, government official badges, and I'm handcuffed to one of them. You could imagine the looks I was getting at JFK.
Yeah.
Like, who the hell? And they're just flashing me through security, like, oh, yeah, he's good. Come on. Like, all these people are like, what is he like? And meanwhile, I'm also carrying my orders, which is in a government sealed file. It was an interesting time.
You feel like you're on one of those, those TV shows.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, keep in mind, too, I'm only 18, 19 years old. I'm a kid. You know, and that's another reason that self-hatred for myself through this time. I look back, I was like, dude, I was really just a kid.
Yeah.
Going through this. Like, I had no clue what was going on, you know? But, so they get me on the flight, and I end up taking this. I get to Atlanta Airport, get in a cab right to the same Greyhound bus station, take the same bus all the way back to Harrisburg. And then I duck it out. That was another thing. They told me to duck it out for longer this time. They're like, wait a good 6 months before you try to turn yourself in again to get your discharge. They're like, because you will definitely be dropped from payroll by then. Because that was the issue. I wasn't even marked as AWOL. That's why they were sending me back. You know, they're like, even if he tries using whatever leave days you have left, like, it's not going to be enough if you wait that long. I was like, okay. So the day before I go to, my mom was going to drive me down herself to Fort Knox. I get a call. I was just ducking it out of my parents. And I'm like, they're like, hello, is Mike there? I'm like, yeah, this is Mike. And they're like, dude, what's up? It's George. I'm like, don't have a friend George. And my friends don't say, this is your friend George. So immediately I'm like, there's a cop. Hang up, bounce.
On alert.
Yeah. Apparently they showed up with a bounty hunter to the house. And but at that point they started threatening my parents that they were going to put them in jail for aiding and abetting, all this other stuff. So I just had it. I was like, Mom, just drive me back to drive me to Blooming Grove. I'll turn myself in. I'm like, I'm just over this. And I was ready to face the drill sergeant too if I had to. I was like, that's how done with this I am. You know, so she drives me there, and then they send out someone from Toby Hanna because technically, like, cops can't do anything to privates because you technically outrank cops when you're a private in the Army. So they had to send out an actual sergeant. And I get there, they're like, is he handcuffed? Uncuff him this instant. He's like, you all right, Private? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And they're like, you didn't bang you up, right? I was like, no. But they're like, you know, they told my mom, like, he'll be fine. We're going to send him down Fort Knox tomorrow. He's going to get discharged. And that's exactly what happened. So that's kind of a big part of my story, because that got the ball rolling for extremely bad things to happen all by my choice. Because obviously that messed me up a little bit, you know, and that's there's so much that happened in that time too. That, like I said, that was a very brief, like, thing that, you know, way of telling that story. But, which, you know, it's really hard to tell that story, especially to the public, because I did deal with, I mean, I even dealt with some people from our church calling me a coward that knew what happened to me and stuff. And, like, so I got really, like, pissed at people in the church, you know, like, I was mad at God, even though he worked all those miracles out for me. Like, I mean, that was my plan. Like, I had my whole life planned around the Army career and stuff. And it was just like, nope. So I definitely went hard on rebellion against God. Started doing mad amounts of drugs, you know. It started with just smoking weed, which whatever. If you smoke weed, I don't care. But it led me to wanting to do other stuff. I was doing that from pretty much like 19, 20 years old till I was about 25. I was just like binging hard, doing whatever I wanted. I still believed in God, but I was just mad at him. Very mad at him, you know. I remember even at one point telling him I hated him, you know. which that haunts me still, even though I know he forgives me for it. Like, so much more makes sense now that I have my own kids that will tell me they hate me sometimes when they get mad.
Yeah.
And it's like, you could tell me you hate me all you want. I still love you to death.
Yeah.
Like, and I would die for you in a heartbeat. And it's like, I always think, like, if someone who's so malfunctioning as a Christian and just human being altogether can love my child that much, why do we think God can't love us that much and even more?
Yeah.
The one who actually created love itself. Like, it's so funny how we just, we have, when we think about ourselves, and this is a big part of my testimony too, is just like living with the self-hate so much and the guilt and all that, like, and you just, like, all the times I question, like, how could you love me after I said I hate you and I purposely was trying to hurt you and all this stuff, and you still, like, bailed me out.
Yeah.
And then, like, I understood it, but not to the extent until I had my own kids. And then everything became crystal clear and so simple, obviously, to understand God after I had my own kids and I could feel the love I have for my kids. I completely understood how God, to an extent, closest I could understand how God feels for us is that, so a big part to what ended my drug abuse was, there was one night I just was like, I just want to, like, go nuts tonight. And I was with a buddy and his girlfriend, and that night I ended up doing like 5 Percocet, Oxy, and I want to say there was something else that I did too. And then I drank about like 12 beers or something like that. And then I ended it by snorting 2 Suboxone. Yeah. The next morning I was like laying down in my own puke. I was the only one there in the house. So I was like kind of feeling like, what, they leave me for dead? Or did they think I was dead and they just got scared and bailed? Because I called, I was like, where are you guys? They're like, oh, we just had to run out. Like, I could hear the nervousness in the voice. Like, I'm like, they straight up left me for dead, like, that's what I feel like, So that kind of was my awakening moment. Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I need to get out of this, So
it almost sounds too, with that cocktail, that concoction, man, it sounds like God had a hand in that too.
Oh, yeah.
Waking you up the next day.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I actually, so like, very few people I've told that part of my story about, they're like, honestly, the Suboxone probably saved you too.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know what it was when I was taking it. I mean, I was so messed up, and I looked at my buddy's girlfriend. I was like, I just want something else. Like, I was jonesing bad. And she's like, well, I got these painkillers. Like, if you want those. I was like, sure. And like, the minute I taken Suboxone prior to that, and it has like this orange flavor to it. And the minute I snorted it, I tasted that orange. I'm like, you did not just give me that, because I knew it was all straight up downhill from there. But honestly, it made me puke everything I took back up.
Yeah.
So it probably saved me, honestly, from overdosing or anything like that. Which, and there's some people out there, I'm sure they're like, that's it. Like, but no, I know it was definitely, at that moment, I did know, like, God saved my butt that night, definitely. And, so that's been that from that point to just like, I don't know, 7-8 years ago that was a very strange time in my life, because like I was back on trying to get myself together again, there was some relationships that fell through and stuff that messed me up a little bit, but not enough that ever made me want to go back to the drugs or anything like that. I guess during that time it was like kind of stale. I was bouncing between jobs. I was tattooing on the side a lot. And then graphic design, I was trying my hardest to get my graphic design career going. And I was like all over the place. Like at one point up North Carolina to Delaware, back here, like, and it was just very short amounts of time though. But when God really started working on me again was like I said, not too long ago, with because like since then I've loved God very much, and I was still trying to figure him out, I guess. But then when I met Sarah, things kind of changed, and it's like it stinks because I kind of want to tell you partly I guess hopefully she'll mention I'm sure she'll mention our conversation that led her to Wallen Paul Pack Church, but like led us both there, because I'll just very small tidbit because I don't want to steal from her testimony, but she asked who we wanted to marry us, and I said Pastor Ken. I've only was to one of his services prior to that once, but I loved his message and how like he was very down to earth, and
He has that presentation
he does.
about him.
He does. I love how he will use himself as a bad example of what not to do.
Yeah.
He makes it, it's very easy to connect with what he's talking about. So that's why I was like, I kind of want that. So I ended up bringing Sarah there, and she fell in love with it, which I'm sure she'll tell you about. But so since then, a lot of it, and then we ended up having our kids. But it wasn't up until, I want to say it was last year, where my relationship with God has really started to change, where I'm just becoming a lot more aware of like I mentioned before with my kids too, that played a huge part. But just how he treats us, acts towards us, and loves us, has been pretty eye-opening. Pastor Ken mentioned to me that I should do something called a Rafa. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
What was that again?
The Rafa.
The Rafa.
Yeah, it's kind of like a intense spiritual therapy session. So I ended up doing that, and really digs in deep on some like garbage that's in you, and you just kind of pray against it, bring it out of you. And at that point, like, because I still was dealing with so much self-hatred, like I hated myself, even when I, believed in God and I knew he loved me no matter what, but I was like, that doesn't matter. I don't love myself, and like, you can love me all you want, God, I still hate who I am, and I feel like that's a pretty common feeling as a Christian, especially when you're sinning.
Yeah.
Like and that's the conviction. And some I have found though, you have to discern the difference between condemnation and conviction. Condemnation, like for who you are and what you're doing, that's coming from Satan. Conviction's coming from God. And there's a very clear difference between the two, because you just hate it. That self-hatred, that leads you down such dark paths, because then you're like, what's the point in trying? Well, who cares?
Yeah. I've talked to many people recently, and a couple that I've become close to who have that self-hatred or that shame, and they're saying that that's the reason that they haven't gone back to church. They have that shame and they feel like they're not worthy. And I hope that we can, by doing this especially, I hope that we can change that perception.
Yeah.
That
for
self-perception.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And we need to, so like I did that therapy session, and that's when it became clear to me, like, what's that famous saying? It's love the sinner, hate the sin.
Yes.
Love yourself, hate the sin. Like we need to get back, and I'm not saying praise ourselves or like, I'm a queen, I'm a king. I can't stand that stuff, but like, whatever, if that's how you feel, cool. But like, not worshiping yourself, but love the fact that we are children of God, like all of us. You know what I mean? Like, and even the people that seem like so hateful or whatever, or just even evil in our eyes, they're God's people too. And in the world we live in today, there is such a pull from that. Like, and I don't care where you stand politically and where anyone stands politically, there is such an attack on all of us trying to make us hate each other. Just because that one thinks this way, this one thinks that way. Who cares?
Yep.
Seriously, when it comes down to it, and it's like, and that's something else, like, you know, if anyone's listening that isn't a Christian, like, the world wants to paint Christians as we hate you and we think you're going to hell. Like, I see it all the time. And I get their hurt from it because it hurts me really bad when I see Christians acting out like that.
Yeah.
You know, so judgmental. Like, dude, like, I mean, there's so many passages in the Bible that's like, take the log out of your eye before you try taking the splinter out of someone else's. You know, like, you can't be, we can't be doing that, you know, like, it's not what Jesus wants, you know. But then it gets murky, right? When they're like, well, doesn't he say this is a sin? Well, yeah, it does, but it doesn't mean like you're destined for hell at that point.
You're not condemned,
right?
Because
correct.
of your sin,
correct?
Exactly,
yeah.
And that's the big difference, like you were talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah, and like, and I was just real quick story there with that is like I have a friend and she's gay and I love them to death, like. And me and her were having a conversation and she's like, she was talking about my faith and beliefs and stuff. She's like, and she did bring that up. She's like, don't you believe I'm going to hell though, being Christian? And I was like, no, I'm not saying that at all. I was like, I certainly hope you don't. I was like, but let me ask you something. I was like, what do you think I don't see myself as deserving of hell? She's like, well, I don't know. I guess, you know, like, I was like, what makes you think I don't deserve it as much as you, if not more than you? I was like, I'm a believer and I sin. I have sexual sin. I was like, big time. I'm like, it runs rampant actually in the Christian faith and it's a horrible thing. I'm like, what makes you think God looks at my sin as less than yours when I am a believer? You think he's happier with me being like a believer in him and still doing it when you don't know him?
That's in the Bible too, right there.
Right.
You're 100% right.
Right. It's like, no, like I know better and I still do it. I'm like, no, but I know I'm not destined for hell. I'm like, that's the thing. I was like, the judgment on me, I feel like if you and me were to die right now, my judgment would be far more greater than yours just because I do know he exists. You're unsure. I'm like, so you need to get that out of your head right now, you know? I was like, also, I know that God's mercy is beyond anyone's comprehension. I was like, it says we'll probably be surprised who we see up there and who we're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, so the judgment on both sides, Christian, non-Christian, is the biggest weapon we have against each other. It's destroying each other. You know, the minute you can strip that judgment, we all just realize that we are just all kind of crappy people.
Yeah.
Because we are, you know, but we have so much like to offer to each other if we could drop that, you know. I don't know. Anyway, I kind of went off topic there, but yeah, so basically God's been working on me ever since that. And still is still working on me with the, you know, learning not to hate myself so much for falling for the traps of the enemy, because everyone does, you know, and we always will. And that's why I said that disclaimer in the beginning. My testimony is still not over because I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's definitely way more involved. Like our relationship is tighter than it's ever been, I feel. But with that being said, so are the attacks. And that's one thing too, I want to encourage a lot of people. Just because you might give your heart to the Lord, or if you're new to the faith, or you're even thinking about it, don't think for a second that the enemy's going to be like, oh, dang.
Lost them.
We lost them.
Yep.
Let's move on. No, they come at you 50-fold.
Yep.
Because they're like, yeah, no, we're not done here. Like, the battle does not end.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Attacks.
It's constant. And just because you lose a couple battles, it doesn't mean God loves you any less than his love is unchanging, unwavering. Like, that's, like I said, for my kids, I don't, you know, not putting this on any of them. I don't care if they killed someone. I will always love them. Heartbroken? Absolutely. be sad and angry for sure, because let's face the facts. God gets angry with us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Just like any dad would.
Righteous anger.
Absolutely. So it's like, that whole like the dad thing really made a lot of stuff come
Yeah,
like I said.
right.
It just makes so much more clear with God, and
It does.
but it makes me feel so much more connected with him at the same time. A lot of times too, when I lose my temper, I'm like with my kids, I'm like, God, I really wish I had the patience for my kids that you have for me. Like, but yeah, so I mean, that's basically my testimony. Like I said, I'm still working it out, and I still will until I'm in the ground, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't hope that for me. I'm hoping like maybe one day I'll just have complete victory where Satan's like not even worth our time. That would be nice, but
Right.
unfortunately, like he hates us as much as God loves us. Like his hate is unwavering for us. So he will do everything he can to draw us from God's plans for us. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's basically my testimony.
Well, I love it. I think that was a really good story, man. So the one question I want to finish up with is, if there's one piece of advice you can give to somebody that's in a valley in their life, that's going through some stuff, that you think that they can pull from this, what is that?
Just God loves you no matter what, like it doesn't matter how dark and deep that valley is, he can still pull you out of it. But you have to have faith that he's there and listening, and he will pull you out of it. Because, I actually don't like the word believe. Like, I actually hate it.
Yeah.
And it sounds weird because people call us believers. I'm like, no, I know he's there. He's proven it to me. Like, I mean, from my story, like, he has literally proven it to me within minutes of a prayer, which I don't care. I would love to hear a scientist try to solve that out mathematically, the chances of something like that happening.
Yep.
And it's not the universe, because the universe is nothing but a bunch of floating gas. It doesn't answer prayers.
Correct.
And so me being being such a messed up person, having my sin, there's no one that's beyond him. So, and he will, like, I love my children. He loves you just as much as I love my children. And he never pulls back. All you have to do is ask to get me out of whatever I'm in, and have faith that he's there, know that he's listening, and you'll see miracles happen.
As we close today's conversation, Mike's story leaves us with a powerful reminder. Running doesn't end when your feet stop moving. For years after going AWOL, he wandered through life carrying a deep sense of failure, convinced he wasn't worth loving, convinced he had ruined his own story. That kind of self-hatred can make a person feel wayward, unanchored, and far from home. But grace has a way of finding us long before we find ourselves. In the middle of his wandering, God's mercy broke through. Not in a dramatic moment, but in the slow, steady realization that he was still loved, still pursued, still held by a God who never let go. That mercy led him towards healing, toward the woman who would become his wife, and eventually toward a church community where he could finally breathe again, finally belong, and finally rebuild. Mike's journey is living proof of this truth. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. It's from Psalm 23, verse 6. Even when we run, even when we hide, even when we believe we're beyond repair, goodness and mercy still follow. And sometimes they lead us right back home. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow and rate over on Spotify. You can find us now on Apple as well. If you have your own story to tell, please reach out, bonestolifepodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, let's keep these dry bones rattling.